Hey, how's it going, fellas? It's Bill Macross. It's also been a while. Yeah, about 3 months since I uploaded the last video. Admittedly, my life is actually rather busy, and I kind of discarded this channel as something that maybe wasn't going to be for me. But we had somebody on the last video actually submit a comment saying that they wanted me to make more videos, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to dedicate some time to this channel, and I will be uploading to some regular capacity. I'm going to shoot for 2 videos a month, so a video every 2 weeks consistently is what I'm going to shoot for. So anyway, let's get to the stuff I wanted to talk about. It's going to be a rather quick video today, only 2 quick things I wanted to talk about. The first one was a comment on my last video, a different comment on my last video, rather, asking me essentially, the comment says, how would you incorporate empiricism and rationalism in traditionalism for traditionalism to maintain a transcendent yet rational authority? And this is a good question because I don't think I articulated a sufficient answer in this video. So I'd like to not only answer that question, but maybe even correct myself in the last video because I don't think that I properly articulated what I was really trying to say. So I used the term rationalism and empiricism maybe rather loosely. I'm not implying that you need some type of specific method of epistemology to prove the divinity of authority. Rather, all I'm really speaking to is that the governing authority needs to be able to be evidentially divine to any observable capacity by the governed, or else the governed are going to revolt against it, simply put. And this isn't a matter really of ought, it's, as far as I can tell, it's a matter of is. So, for an anecdotal example, if we take a look at America in the mid of the 20th century, we look at the transition from the social culture of the 40s and 50s as they transition into the 60s, and what we see is that the 40s and 50s had social norms and a social authority that in itself was the governing authority above the governed. It wasn't the government, it wasn't the church, it was the social norms themselves. And when everybody more or less forgot why that social authority was divine, they revolted against it, as we see in the 1960s with, feminism, sexual liberation, and just a general affirmative embrace of all things considered degenerate for the sake thereof. So essentially what I'm getting at is the governing authority must be recognizable as being divine by those that are governed, or else they will eventually refuse to be governed by something that they can't recognize as being divine. So, to give a good example of that, maybe even further, something that's even a little more concrete, if anybody's familiar with Dr. Mike Mew and the things that he discusses on his YouTube channel, link in the description for anybody interested, he discusses to some capacity about how people have forgotten their dinner manners, their table manners, essentially. The traditions of mealtime, the authority of mealtime traditions. Everyone forgot about it. It was a revolt. It was, no, Mom and Dad, I don't want to sit up straight with my shoulders back and my chin up and my chest out, with my chewing food with my mouth closed and swallowing my food properly, keeping my elbows off the table, not slouching over. I don't want to do that. I want to eat like a lazy slob because you're just having a power trip over me and telling me what to do for the sake of telling me what to do. And everyone just went with that and rolled with it. And what we see today is that if you live in the post-industrial world, America, what people would call the first world or the West, etc., you look around, we're all basically a bunch of slack-jawed, long-faced village idiots. We are just ugly compared to 100 years ago. We just accept these long, downward grown faces as being genetic now. We don't even know why it's happening. We get extremely expensive facial reconstructive surgeries to correct the problem, when in reality, this is entirely a side effect of abandoning mealtime traditions, because we no longer recognize them as being divine. And what I mean by divine is not ordained by any particular religious deity. What I mean by divine is something that can be recognizably altruistically good. Something that is of net benefit beyond something material. That's really all I mean. When I talk about recognizing divinity within governed authority, it's not like magic. It's not recognizing some type of religious revelation so much as it is just about recognizing the ultimate good within following some type of tradition. And ultimately, you have to be able to observe that divinity in order for any governing authority to be legitimate insofar as those governed by it will not revolt against it and will not tear it down eventually. That's what I mean. And hopefully that's a better articulation of my thoughts. So, I think this is a decent transition into what I wanted to do in this video ultimately, and that's a basic introduction to an idea called communitarianism. So essentially the idea of communitarianism is that it's really a question of ought and not a question of is. The notion being that the individual, the identity of the individual rather, should be to some degree constructed by the surrounding community. And it's antithetical to what we call classical liberalism, your sticks, hex, and hammer, 666 mentality. Oh, there is a large stink bug in my room. That's gross. Your Sargon of Akkad, your sticks, hex, and hammer, these ultimate liberalist type people. It is completely antithetical to the notion of communitarianism in that the personal identity should not be entirely constructed in an isolated manner. The idea of every man is an island is the antithesis of communitarianism. Rather, under communitarianism, it is such that it is better for man's identity rather to be constructed by the surrounding community. That's really the basic idea of communitarianism. And this, again, harkens back to the mid-20th century in America when we hit the 1960s and we abandon all social authority, everything that binds us, and we go to this completely atomized individual whose identity is solely constructed based on whatever that individual is capable of constructing within himself. Is not able to be identified by any means outside of himself. So that's the ultimate conflict. And we can throw all the blame onto the boomers if we want for the, again, the social revolts of varying types and degrees throughout the 1960s and beyond. But I'm not going to really get into a whole lot of that in this video. This video was really just for the purpose of addressing the comment on the last video and hoping to articulate my thoughts a little bit better. And also, I wanted to take a brief introduction of communitarianism because it's an idea that I'm very much interested in, and it is an idea that I am going to create more content on in the future. So if this is an idea, if the idea that the individual's identity should be to some capacity constructed by the surrounding community, if you are interested in the idea of this, stick around because this is a topic I will be discussing more in the future. One last, small note on it is if you take a look at general happiness and personal satisfaction studies that have been done for decades. If you take a look at the 40s and 50s versus today, people were way happier, generally speaking, in the 1940s and 50s when they had a strong, dominant social authority that governed them, as opposed to today where we ironically have a much more constraining and oppressive government, but social authority that is virtually non-existent. People are way less happy now, living as absolute liberalists, than they were when they had some type of authority to constrain them and mold them. Now, the idea of communitarianism is in no way necessarily related to any type of economic structure. It has nothing to do with communism. It has nothing to do with socialism, so don't don't lose your mind over that one. Maybe the name is rather unfortunate, but it has nothing to do necessarily with any type of economic structure. It's more about social fabric, is really the core basis of the idea. So this is something that I will talk about more in the future. So that's where that is. One last thing I'd like to say is I'm genuinely grateful for whoever posted the comment on the last video asking me that question I addressed earlier this video. I really appreciate that type of input. So to anybody who may have any question they might ask, anything they disagree with me with, anything of the sort, I please want you to put it in the comment section so that I can address it, because it truly does help me either better articulate my thoughts or better formulate them. So anything you have to input, please put it in the comments section. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Also, one other thing I'd like to discuss from the last video is I promised some type of 5 subscriber special, and it turns out doing nothing for 3 months more than doubled my sub count. We are now at 9 subscribers, so that is rather exciting. So what I'm going to do for the 5 subscriber special that I promised, one whole fiscal quarter ago, is I may have mentioned in the past that I write music as a hobby, so I'm going to write my own musical intro to all of my videos from here going forward. So I'm going to give the audience 2 options, and I want you to just comment in the comment section which of these 2 options you would like to go with. So option 1 is a really crunchy, progressive, technical death metal intro, and option B is a smooth 80s retro style synth rock type of intro. So leave your comment in the description. In the chance that we get a tie, I will flip a coin for the tiebreaker. I'm sure I could be accused of lying and picking whichever one I prefer most, but at the end of the day, a vote is a vote, and I promise you I'm not going to do that. I will flip the coin. You're just gonna have to trust me on that one, because I actually don't really prefer. I think both would be just as cool. So leave that comment down in the description, and I'll give you the next goal is 50 subscribers. Is what I would like to hit next. And if we hit 50 subscribers, I will make a Twitter account and I will use it a little bit. I admittedly loathe social media, but I know people generally like to interact with the content creators that they follow. And ultimately, I am serving all of you to some capacity. So if we hit 50 subscribers, that is my promise to you, is that I will make a Twitter account and I will use it to interact with whoever wants to follow me. So that's the next sub count goal, is 50 subscribers, and I'll make a Twitter account. All right, and that's about all I had for today. We actually went a little bit longer than I thought. We're looking at about 12 and a half minutes. So I'm gonna get out of here, and I will talk to you all next time. See you later.